Hi, this is Shiv and you're watching the Venus Project New Delhi channel. So this video has brought us to the final and the fourth part in the series, An Introduction to the Venus Project. So before any further ado, I would just like to tell you about a disclaimer that is, before watching this video, you need to watch the third part of this series, that is the movie Zeitgeist Addendum. And if you haven't watched it, please stop this video right here and go back to the third part. Otherwise you would not be able to understand a thing that is going to be said in this video. Otherwise, if you feel that you're not in a position to watch the whole movie, the whole 1.5 hour movie, that is the third part, then I guess there is only one other alternative, which is to, I might seem a little harsh at this moment, but the only idea that makes sense is to give up the idea of understanding the Venus Project before. If you cannot watch the 1.5 hour movie, you would not be able to understand anything, and if you watch this video, you will have half knowledge, which means, there is a very famous saying that half knowledge is much more dangerous than no knowledge. So having said that, please make your decision, because having half knowledge about this topic will make you come up with weird opinions and weird questions which might not be answered by anyone, and you might try to debunk the direction of the Venus Project. So obviously there are only two extremes, that is no knowledge and complete knowledge, which are safe for a person's well-being. Half knowledge, if you have half knowledge, and you just go to disrupt the world. So okay, then here we come to the presentation. It's called Understanding the Resource-Based Economy, and as I said, this has to be viewed after watching Zeitgeist Addendum. So we have divided this whole video into 4 parts. The first part is understanding the current system and certain prerequisites. Part 2 is a simple comparison between monetary economics, that is today's economics, and resource-based economics. Part 3 is the dilemma, and part 4 is the transition. Okay, so understanding the current system. The basic assumptions of our current economic system are these 3. The first one being the very famous: resources are scarce, we live in a world of scarcity. Now, this is one of the most basic of the basic of assumptions that anyone can ever decode in the current doctrine of economics, and even in daily life. Directly or indirectly, the world has always convinced you that resources are scarce, and hence you need to fight for your share. Second assumption: the well-being of a person is measured by their ability to own the maximum number of resources. The one able to gather as many scarce resources as possible is the winner of the game. And third, a scarce good or resource demands a higher price than an abundant one. Now, simple laws of demand and supply state that if you hold demand constant and keep on increasing the supply, that is, if the resource becomes abundant, its price goes next to zero. And so the resources that are scarce can be sold. These are the only ones that can be sold, since they will demand some price, and since they are the ones that will be sold, they are the ones that will be bought. For example, imagine a big orange farm. If there's a big orange farm, you do not see people picking oranges in the farm and selling them right there itself. Why is that so? Because it won't make sense. In that particular area, there is abundance of oranges. Anybody can come to the farm and pick those oranges themselves. They don't need to buy those oranges from the people who have just picked them up and selling them then and there itself. It won't make sense. But yes, if the person picks oranges from this abundant farm and takes it to a place where oranges are very scarce, there he can sell those oranges, because over there is scarcity of oranges. Hence, generalizing this example, we deal in scarce resources, and since Money facilitates their exchange. Money represents the ability of a person to own scarce resources. You cannot buy an abundant resource with the help of money. Therefore, all abundant resources, whether present or not, are not considered to be a part of the economic system at all. In fact, in economic terms, abundant resources are called free resources, and hence economics cannot be applied to them. So, well, finally, an analysis of the system we live in looks something like this Venn diagram. The larger blue set is the abundant resources. The pink one is scarce resources, represented by money. And the red one inside the pink one, which again represents some scarce resources, but this one is actually technology for the extraction and utilization of some of the abundant resources. So this means that some of this technology for the extraction and utilization of those abundant resources is actually very, very scarce. Now, the ramifications of this aspect will be seen later in the video. So now we come to the prerequisites. We need to define what economics is. Since we are discussing a lot about an economy and scarce resources and everything, we need to define what economics is. When we come to defining a word, we must first divide it into its Latin or Greek roots. This is the etymological method of deciphering the meaning of a word. So you can break up the word economics into two parts. Number one, eco, and number two, nomos. Eco means home or house. On the macro level, it means the whole planet. And nomos means law. Hence, economics means the physical and natural laws that govern the working of the planet as a system for survival and growth. Now, since we are talking about economics, that is the study of our planet, the laws that govern it, we need to relate economics to ecology, because first of all, the word eco is common in both, and second, logy, ecology. Logy means logic, the study of the planet. So once you study the planet, only then can you generalize the observations into laws. For physical and scientific laws are nothing but generalizations of a number of observations. So after this, we need to define what an economy is. Well, an economy is a spatially limited social network where goods are produced and consumed. Since we had defined that economics is the science that deals with the theory of production, distribution, and consumption of goods. It studies how society utilizes its resources, and in the end, economics is all about efficiency. A theory that does not maximize efficiency is not an economic theory at all. So an economy is a spatially limited social network where goods are produced, consumed, and distributed. It is the end result of a process that involves its technological evolution and social organization, along with its geography, natural resource endowment, and ecology as main factors. That is why I said we need to relate economics to ecology. So since we say that economics is a social science, we need to get the social perspective as well. So we need to define what society is. A society is a group of people related to each other through persistent relations. Members of a society work towards the common good of the people so as to form a cooperative aggregate. Now this brings us to part 2. This is the comparison between the monetary economics and resource-based economics. So the first attribute of monetary economics is self-interest. This is the first thing that is taught to any economics student apart from the assumption of scarcity. Agents in an economy seek their own interests or those of their respective groups, magically creating balance and welfare. Now this is something that is very much related to Adam Smith's invisible hand, which he had written about in his inquiry into the wealth of nations. Adam Smith said that there is this invisible hand in the market, which is not seen by anyone, which magically creates balance and welfare, which is driven by the self-interest of the agents in the economy. Agents meaning the producers and the consumers. So everybody just seeks their own self-interest, and that is what they do, and it is supposed to create magical balance and welfare. But the actual story is quite different. We have seen that. Now, resource-based economics says social concern. People realize that the empathic drive is natural and hence work towards seeking what is best for everyone. This is what exactly society is all about: social concern, collaborativeness. So people realize that the empathic drive is natural and hence work towards seeking what is best for everyone. For in fact, in the current system, we are not working together, but in fact against each other. Okay, so now again, monetary economics says competition. Agents compete with each other in order to gain benefit over the other and fulfill their individual interest, eliminating others from the arena. Of course, if we are dealing in scarce resources, there has to be some competition, otherwise the other person might take away what you need. So there's always competition in monetary economics, and people compete with each other to gain benefit over the other and fulfill their own individual interests, since they are self-interest seeking agents. Now, against that, resource-based economics says cooperation. People work towards the common good without eliminating anyone from the arena, living up to the theoretical definition of society. So, the next thing monetary economics says is private property. Agents have ownership over property that cannot be infringed upon by anyone else, even though it might not be used over a long period of time. Now you've got to understand over here, property over here does not mean just land. This is a misconception. In economics, property means whatever you own. That is private property. A property could be a computer, could be a book, could be a table, could be a house, could be land, could be anything. Anything that you own is known as private property. So now an example for private property here in Delhi alone is, you can say on an average, every house has at least one car. And almost every house, in every house, one person drives that car to their office. And over there, that car sits in the parking for around 8 hours. For those 8 hours, those cars, on the macro level, those millions of cars are not used for at least those 8 hours. They are not used because they are owned by someone else. And since they're owned by someone else, they cannot be used by anyone else. But they are sitting idle, they're not being used. This leads to wastage of resources. Had people been able to use cars at the time when they were not being used, resources would not have been wasted. The resources would not have been wasted. Cars would not have been sitting idle. Now against this, resource-based economics says access. People have access over property. They use it when required and return it when done, so that it could be used by others. Somewhat how a library works. Now think of it, if there was no concept of private property, if you did not own the car, you drove the car to your office, and another person who needed the car drove that car to their office. This would obviously save fuel, this would obviously save resources that went into making those cars, and hence we would not have to make millions of those cars, but maybe 1,000, that's all. Because they're being used over and over again, they're not sitting idle. So this implies preservation of resources. Now other than that, the monetary system says obsolescence and cyclical consumption. Now this is something very, very interesting. Whenever you buy a good or a product, it is always and always containing 3 types of obsolescence. Number 1, and by the way, you will not find this in any of the economics books, you'll never find this in of the documentaries that tell you about economics, this is something that is there. The first one is known as intrinsic obsolescence. Now, when a firm produces anything, right from accumulation of raw materials to cost of labor to the actual production process, the firm faces costs at every level. The firm faces costs at every level. Since it faces costs at every level, it needs to face something known as cost efficiency. Cost efficiency means minimizing your costs to the maximum level possible. Why? So that you can sell it at a higher price and gain more profits. This means that since they are being accumulated through costs, which means raw materials are bought. Obviously, they are scarce resources because the whole economy works on scarce resources. They are bought. They have a certain cost, and every producing firm has a budget constraint as well. So every firm needs to get their raw materials within their budget constraints, whatever their budget constraint allows. Hence, this leads to something known as intrinsic obsolescence, which is the firm does not buy products that are of the highest quality possible, but rather they buy raw materials which are a little lower in quality because they have a budget constraint. Which means that every good, the moment it is produced, it is inferior. Now there's something known as planned obsolescence. Planned obsolescence is that goods are deliberately designed to live a much shorter lifespan than they can actually endure, so that they become useless and consumers buy newer versions of those goods. For in fact, the ultimate goal of any producing firm is sales. And how can they increase their sales? They need to sell their product again and again. And why would any consumer need the same product again and again? Because the previous product has become obsolete. This is planned obsolescence. This can be found very easily in all kinds of electronics. Now, the third kind of obsolescence is called perceived obsolescence. Now, the world of advertising makes sure that we feel inferior the moment we see an advertisement. This is something very ironical because since in every advertisement, every product is new and improved, they make you feel that whatever you have is old and obsolete, even though in actual sense it might not be. This is perceived obsolescence. So these three kinds of obsolescence are bred into each and every good that is produced in this economic system. Against this, resource-based economics says preservation. Goods are designed to last, to be recycled, and to be updated using standardized, universally interchangeable parts. And in the rare case when it can't be upgraded or updated, the good will be recycled in any possible way. And the technologies for recycling, most of the products are actually out there, but they're not used because they're not economically efficient, because they do not help the economy grow, because it stops cyclical consumption. Coming with the next point, monetary economics says money and scarcity. Money, which represents scarce resources, as we saw, is used as the economic tool to maintain global scarcity. Now, statistically speaking, 50% of the world population actually lives under $2.5 a day, which is almost equal to 135 rupees a day, which sums up to around 4,000 rupees a month, which is next to nothing. And this survey has been done by globalissues.org, and they've also found out that 80% of the world population lives under $10 a day, which sums up to be around 500 rupees a day. So money is used to maintain global scarcity. Now against this, resource-based economics says technology and abundance. Technology which keeps on upgrading, since it is based on Moore's law, which says that technology grows at an exponential rate, is used as the economic tool to create abundance all over the world. I mean, Moore's law is something that says technology grows at an exponential rate. Think of it. I mean, in the 1700s, nobody would have thought of making something known as a laptop. 70 years ago, nobody would have thought of making something known as a computer. 15 years ago, nobody would have thought of something that could be called a smartphone. So this is actual exponential growth, which is based on Moore's law. This is something that leads to better standard of living. Now you can look at the analogy. Kings in maybe the 18th century were not as better off as you are today, even though you might not be that wealthy. Because in that time, the kings did not have access to cars. The kings did not have access to technology such as laptops, such as your smartphones, such as your palm tops, such as anything else that you might just see around. They did not have access to maybe even electricity. So the standard of living has increased because of an exponential increase in technology. Even though we are not as wealthy as those kings, but we are actually living at a better standard of living. So technology helps us achieve a better standard of living. The next point, monetary economics says inequality. Now this is something very, very preposterous. Nobody can be made better off without making someone else worse off. This is the most preposterous notion of today's economics. In order to make someone better off, you need to either directly or indirectly chisel off some other person's wealth. And against this, resource-based economics says equality. Every human being is treated equally without any kind of a social stratification. No elitism, no competition, nothing. Everybody is equal. Next point, the debate over incentives. Monetary economics says that a monetary or a financial incentive, something known as a remunerative incentive, is what always works. If you reward something, you get more of the behavior you want, and if you punish something, you get less of the behavior you don't want. Now, an incentive is something actually that drives us, that motivates us to do something else. Let me explain you something. The concept of incentives has not arose from the discipline of economics. It has, in fact, got to do everything with psychology. And the doctrine of psychology has got 4 kinds of incentives rather than just 2. What economists have actually done is a very cunning thing. They've just taken up 2 concepts of incentives and built up a whole doctrine upon these 2 kinds of incentives. The first one being a financial incentive, the second one being a coercive incentive. A coercive incentive is something which is very much similar to a financial incentive, wherein if someone has a gun over your head, you will obviously do the thing they are asking you to do, because you love yourself, you don't want to die, which is something very much similar to a financial incentive. Your employer has the power to either throw you out of the company, or give you perks. Now, the other 2 kinds of incentives that psychology talks about are moral and natural incentives. Now, a moral incentive is something that you know deep down that this is the right thing to do. Whereas a natural incentive is based on the following. Number 1, autonomy. Autonomy is the desire to be self-directed. This is what motivates us to be more engaged to our work. For example, an Australian software company known as Atlassian, they do something very, very interesting. They give 24 hours to their employees, wherein you're allowed to do anything you want to do, along with partying and beer and everything. But whatever you do, you need to show the results at the end of the day. And this has resulted in a number of software fixes, a whole bunch of new ideas, and a whole array of new possibilities for the company. The second thing is mastery. It is the urge to get better at a task. It is the feeling of satisfaction that drives us to get mastery. Example, why do people play the guitar? Why do people dance? Why do people draw? Why do people get to the arts? They're not getting any money out of it. Then why the heck are they doing it? Because they feel satisfied, something known as personal satisfaction. This is mastery. The third thing is purpose. It is the anticipated outcome that guides our actions. For example, if Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak hadn't thought of making something known as a personal computer, there would not have been something known as a personal computer. It's as simple as that. I mean, there would have only been computers that were used by big corporations for certain tasks, and that's all. And we would have been deprived of computers at our homes, which are, in today's date, a major part of our life, a major part of our lives. Another example, if the creator of Skype hadn't had the purpose of making the world a smaller place, we would not have had something known as Skype. We would not have had something known as video conferencing. So these are moral and natural incentives. Now the next thing, monetary economics says labor for income. Human survival is contingent upon one's ability to obtain employment, which serves the basis for the life ground. Automation of labor is in fact detrimental as it increases unemployment. Whereas resource-based economics says automation. Most of the work, including production, construction, and governance, is done by machines with minimal human supervision. The realization is that automation is far more productive and efficient than humans in all respects because they are devoid of opinions. It is as simple as that. They use the scientific method to maximize optimization. And the next thing, monetary economics says infinite growth. Okay, this is something very interesting. Infinite growth in the form of GDP, that is new production and cyclical consumption, is required to run the system, otherwise it collapses. Now, a major contributor to GDP is consumption. About 70% of GDP in any economy today is consumption. And what is consumption? The faster people buy and consume goods, the better it is for the economy. This is nothing but cyclical consumption. And why do people demand for goods again and again? Because they become obsolete. This is caused by the three kinds of obsolescence we just heard about. This is something that simply wastes resources. I mean, GDP says that if we keep on depleting the Earth's resources again and again, faster and faster, we would gain more growth. I mean, this is just as absurd as it can ever be. This is causing thousands and thousands and millions of square miles of land which lies as dump yards around the world. Now, against this, resource-based economics says a steady state economy. Dynamic equilibrium is required in nature to overcome the problems of overruns and shortages, which can be done only with the help of technology. No human being can ever sit down and do statistical investigations of all kinds of resources out there in the world. It has to be done by either a computer or a supercomputer or an advanced machine. We cannot do it ourselves. Dynamic equilibrium means that if the rate of regeneration of a resource is much faster than the rate of consumption of the resource by us, then we are in dynamic equilibrium. If it is the opposite, that is, if the rate of regeneration is much less than the rate of consumption, then we're in a problem big time. It's something known as dynamic disequilibrium. So this is all about the comparison between monetary economics and resource-based economics. This brings us to part 3. The dilemma. Okay. These are some of the questions that might be cropping up into your mind since you have watched the movie Zeitgeist Addendum, since you have seen the first two videos that we uploaded, and since you have seen certain things that we have showed in this video till now. So this is an attempt to answer some of those frequently asked questions, which may be the following. First one: it is in the nature of the human being to be self-interest seeking and competitive. It's genetic. If we are making assumptions about human behavior, we need to delve into psychology, neurobiology, and something known as behavioral genetics. These three scientific fields tell us that there is no human nature, there is no predetermined human nature at all. There is only human behavior, and that behavior is environmentally determined. There might be a competitive gene in us, but it is triggered only because our environment is competitive from the start. The genetic argument outside the context of environment is baseless. If our environment changes, so will our behavior. A big example: humans have a genetic component to learn language. This doesn't mean that every child knows language right from birth. It rather means that we have the tendency to learn language much faster than any other species if we are provided with the right kind of environment for learning language. An extreme case of this is the feral children. Feral children are children who have been brought up by animals, actual animals, maybe dogs and wolves and the like, and who have been brought up by these animals, and hence they behave, talk, walk, and think like animals, like those animals they were brought up with, because they were brought up in that environment. So this proves that the genetic argument outside the context of environment is completely baseless. We have soft wiring for everything, but that soft wiring turns into hard wiring only because of our environment. And if our environment favors some of the soft wiring, some of the genes, only those genes become predominant. We have a soft wiring for everything, for competitiveness as well as for collaboration. It all depends on the environment we live in, which determines how our behavior is going to be, because as we said, there is no predetermined human nature. When a baby is born, that baby does not know how to behave in society, or maybe just simply how to behave. The baby learns how to behave when inputs from its environment go into its brain. Only then does its associative system start working, and only then does its behavior start developing according to its environment. So the next question. Healthy competition promotes well-being, as producers supplying the best goods get rewards in the form of higher profits, and people capable of doing stuff get the chance to do so. Now, to answer this, I'd just like to say that competition is called healthy when it is confined within the prescribed business laws, which are, by the way, subject to frequent changes. One of the biggest examples, now I'm sorry I cannot take the names because I've been told that if I take the names I might be into big trouble. I might be into trouble big time. So one of the most prominent businessmen of India, who is the biggest example of from rags to riches, actually had a lot of contacts with the then Prime Minister, and he had to import a lot of certain material which had a high duty if you had to import it. So what happened was, since he had great contacts with the Prime Minister, what he did was he brought those import ships onto the docks just before he made the law change for 24 hours. That is it. And for those 24 hours the law was changed. His ships were there, they got unloaded, all the necessary material got down. He purchased that material and obviously did not pay the duty at all, because the law was changed for 24 hours, and this was all in secret. And before any one of his competitors could know what happened, the law had changed back again, which means that the duty on that certain material had gone up again. So this is so-called healthy competition, and there are millions of other such examples which keep on happening every day. You just need to read certain newspapers like Economic Times and Business Finance, and you can see all that. So these prescribed business laws are subject to frequent changes, and this is what is called healthy competition. Whereas in fact the practice of eliminating others to gain benefit over their condition is detrimental to our social well-being. Now coming to the next point, people who are capable of doing certain things will be given chances in a just world like the resource-based economy, there would not be other people running the rat race. A very big example from India: a number of students in their 11th and 12th standard opt for the sciences, that is physics, chemistry, mathematics and biology, because there is a peer pressure to opt for the same and to go for something known as engineering and medical entrance tests, because there is a lot of peer pressure and maybe a lot of parental pressure as well. Now what happens in this case is, many people who do not have the associative system to actually go through the pains of becoming an engineer or becoming a doctor or becoming something like that, opt for the sciences and come into the rat race for the entrances. What happens is, because since again we live in a scarce world, there is scarcity of seats in the best of institutes. Since there is scarcity of seats with respect to the number of applicants, there has to be competition. Since there is competition, there is a lot of rat race. So people have to go through a lot of examinations, a lot of competitions, a lot of, the like, to get to what they want to do. If there were no other people who actually there was no need for them to be there in the competition, to be there in the rat race, there would not have been a need for an examination or a competition at all. So in the resource-based economy, people who are capable of doing certain stuff, of doing certain things which maybe other people cannot do and which the other people are not even interested in, those people will be given the chances. Okay. The price mechanism is the most efficient way to allocate resources. A system where a value is not assigned to goods cannot work. Now this is the argument put forth by economists against this resource-based economic system, this resource-based economy. To answer this, I just like to say that the attribute of efficiency cannot be attached with the price mechanism at all, because all prices are subject to change due to inflation caused by perpetual increase in money supply, as you saw in the movies I guessed at, which obviously happens in every economy, and maybe fluctuations in foreign exchange markets, and many other mind-numbing factors. I mean, just for an example, the rupee shot from recently. The rupee shot from rupees 50. The dollar shot from rupees 50 to rupees 55. Now the oil barrels which we had been importing from other countries became much more costlier. Since most products are transported from the site of production to the site of sale in any economy, the transportation has got to use oil, because the whole transportation system is based on oil. Now since the cost of oil has gone up, the cost of transportation has increased, which shows up in the increased prices everywhere, and it has been the case in the recent past. A very small example that I particularly remember is that the price of one packet of curd rose from rupees 20 to 22 for no rhyme or reason. And if you ask them what the reason for the price hike is, they say, this is how it is, man. Prices always keep on rising. You've always got to keep up with it. They do not have an actual reasoning behind it. Well, This is the reasoning. Such are the reasonings behind these so-called price hikes. And now, after all, a price is the psychological value assigned to a good, keeping in mind the relative prices of other goods. Now, for example, to explain this, I need to explain how markets came into being. Obviously, over time, there were a number of markets that did not exist, so somebody had to initiate a market. So let's take an example. Suppose you are starting off with a niche market for a leather purse. Supposing that no other person has ever produced a leather purse, you get to do it. You buy the resources, you buy some of the raw materials, you use some of the raw materials from your own without buying them. You create the purse. Now, since you had bought some of the raw materials, you include that cost in the selling price. And since you had included some raw materials which you had taken from your own resource palette, which did not cost you, but since you live in a profit-oriented world, you include that cost in the price as well. And apart from that, since it is a niche market, since the resource, this leather purse that you're going to sell is a scarce resource in itself, the assumption of scarce resources demand a higher price comes into being. Since this is a very scarce resource, since you're starting with a niche market, you're going to include a lot of cost as well, which is not actually the cost, but the price shows up to be real high. So finally, the price of any good is a psychological value assigned to a good, keeping in mind the relative prices of other goods. This is how pricing came into being. I mean, we have to realize that it is not the price we are looking for in the good, but in fact the utility it serves. The next question: if there is no inequality in society, there would be no incentive for people to work. That is, if they know that they can't get any better, why would they submit to a job? Well, now first of all, the equality we talk of is not static, since our economic system would be completely based on technology, which we said keeps on increasing at an exponential rate because of Moore's law. So, the standard of living of all the people would keep on increasing perpetually. This itself is the incentive for people to work towards the common good. If we work towards improving technology, it proves my standard of living along with the standard of living of other people as well. It does not hurt me as long as it benefits me. I mean, if you want to talk in terms of the self-interest mode, I am happy. Someone else's bright kid means a better future for me. If we contribute to society in any way, even through music, dance, arts, any of the sciences, it will eventually improve technology, which will improve everyone's standard of living, including your own. In fact, the fraction of the population required to run the system in the resource-based economy is not even 1%. The other 99% of the people have the freedom to follow their passions in life. All the technical, engineering, and scientific work is required to be done by only 1% of the population. Even in today's world, we do not reap off the benefits of millions of people's inventions, but rather only hundreds. We need a minimum of 1%, but if we increase it to say 2% or 3% or maybe 10%, imagine where we could be. Whereas the rest 99% of the people have the freedom to follow their passions in life. Now, today's system is not made for the people because, for example, I myself wanted to become a professional musician. I wanted to become a professional theater person, but okay, since I live in a social system, I had to preserve myself. Since I live in this social system, I had to preserve myself. So I had to submit to something known as academics after high school. But if given the choice, I would have completely given up academics and continued with music and theater, which are my passions in life. So And I'm sure many of you wanted to become many other things, but your talents were curbed because of the so-called system, because it requires you to work your behinds off to earn a living, so that you earn money and you get access to resources, which is actually just scarce resources. So a system where people's passions are killed is not a system for the people, but rather a system against the people's will. Okay, if machines do all the work, won't we just sit around and do nothing and become big fat blobs eating away everything? Well, this myth has been pumped into everybody's head so that they become self-appointed guardians of the status quo. We have to understand that we are by design curious about and interested in new ventures. Every child has the capability to become a little Einstein. If environment can force kids to behave like animals, it can also make them intelligent. But what do we have? Baba Baba Black Sheep, Johnny Johnny Yes Baba, Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall, London Bridge is falling down, etc. etc. What does the child learn? Some bridge called London Bridge, which is not even situated in London, is about to fall, which is in fact a detrimental situation. If the kid asks, what do we do about it? Well, we do not know, it's just a song. So, we fill kids' heads with such crap and we expect them to grow sane. We expect them to grow up sane, S-A-N-E. This is just completely preposterous again. So, now look at the social perspective. Why do we consider a guy to be a hunk when he has sex with 10 women, whereas we consider a woman to be a prostitute if she has sex with 10 men? It is all about upbringing. It is all about environment. This is what has been put into our heads since we were young. I'm sure if you pick up 10 young women, if you pick up a sample of 10 young women and take them to an offshore island very, very far from this society, and you bring them up in your own way, you give them your different value system, educate them your own way, and tell them that the woman who has sex with the maximum number of men is the best woman. I'm sure every woman would be willing to have sex with as many men as possible, because in their environment, in their society, in their culture, in the culture that you have created for them, having sex with the maximum number of men is what is considered to be good. So, those social perspectives that we are aware of are limited to just the urban and the suburban climates. When you go down to the grassroots level, maybe the rural areas or even the tribal areas, we find that their value system is very, very different. This Jacques Fresco guy, the person who was introduced to you in the movie Zeitgeist Addendum, who is in fact the mind behind the Venus Project. He used to travel a lot around the world, and in the 60s and 70s he traveled to an island, I don't really remember the name of the island, where their culture was very, very different, their value system was very, very different, and he was astounded to look at their value system. Over there, the kids were brought up naked. If you're brought up naked since childhood, if everyone around you is naked, you do not have the urge to look at things. He told us, Jacques Fresco told in one of the interviews, that whenever a male talked to a female, he did not look at the breasts. In fact, he looked in the eyes. Now this is what is social concern. This is what is social perspective. This is what is social communication. This is how it is supposed to be. This is what makes sense in their culture as well. And there is another tribe in Africa for whom the lower abdomen is not important, but the upper portion is much more important, even for men, even for women. Everyone covers their chest but leaves their abdomens bare. Now, if they were to be brought to urban and suburban cities, they would go mad looking at everyone's lower abdomens covered with cloth. So you see, it is all dependent on the culture we are brought up in the society we are brought up in, and the value system that we are given. That is why I gave you these examples. So, yeah, we have to understand that we are by design curious about and interested in new ventures. Remember when you were a kid, always active and interested in new people? It was only when the monetary system took over you that you became lazy and ignorant about certain things and developed a specific point of view of looking at the world. Now, it all comes down to the responsibility of the parent to inculcate not the right kind of the value system, but the value system that makes sense in the child. We need to accept things that make sense. You know, these dualities such as the right and wrong, good and evil, male and female, black and white, they do not exist in the real world, and even if they do not give us a sensible outlook on environmental happenings. A very small example. The slaughtering of cows and buffaloes in the viewpoint of an orthodox Hindu is wrong, because for the Hindu, the cow is Gaumata. We preach them, we pujofy them, to put in a weird vernacular. We pray to them. Hindus do that. So in their viewpoint, this is what their culture has been. This is what they have been taught since childhood, to worship the cow, to worship certain deities, concepts, upbringing. This is how it is done. So, and this has to be done since childhood. Otherwise, if you try to inculcate these things into an adult, it wouldn't be much fruitful. So, and on the other hand, if you look at the problem from the Muslims' point of view, then there's nothing wrong. It is right. Slaughtering cows and buffaloes is right, because the Muslim has been eating the cow and the buffalo, the beef, since childhood. So why should he suddenly give up eating beef? So, the right and wrong are only subject to the viewpoint. From the viewpoint of the Hindu, it is wrong to slaughter those cows and buffaloes, whereas from the viewpoint of the Muslim, it is not. Now, what makes sense? The neutral aspect is what gives us a sensible outlook on environmental happenings. What makes sense? What makes sense is, if I don't know the actual history, but I'm just assuming it, if Muslims started off from a place in the earlier days where there was scarcity of vegetarian food or maybe vegetables, and an abundance of cows and buffaloes and a lot of non-vegetarian products, it made sense to slaughter them, because finally we have to survive. This is how maybe their culture evolved. Maybe this is why they have eating beef in their culture, and from their point of view it is right. But what makes sense is this: at that point of time, they might not have had a lot of vegetables and a lot of vegetarian products available in the place they came from, so it made sense to slaughter those cows and buffaloes. That is all. So, coming back to the kid thing, when we were kids, we were always active and interested in new people. It was only when the monetary system took over us that we became lazy and ignorant about certain things and developed a specific viewpoint of looking at things. My own example, when I was admitted to kindergarten, I already knew 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 and ABCD thanks to my mom, and there was nothing new that was happening in class. This is what my mom tells me. I obviously don't remember it, but this is what she tells me from the PTA meetings and the parent-teacher meetings. What happened was, since I already knew what was going to happen in class, that did not interest me, since I already knew what was going to happen. So what happened was, I used to put my head down and sleep and say, please don't bore me with the shit I already know. Please tell me something new, but the teacher didn't have anything new to tell me. That is when I started becoming ignorant about my teacher. So this is an example to show that Only when the monetary system comes up upon you, you start becoming ignorant and lazy. It is only environment that curbs our abilities to be curious and active, not genes. So, coming to the next question. One of my favorites. Artificial intelligence will take over the world and destroy the human race. Well, let me say, artificial intelligence is primarily the study and design of intelligent agents, where an intelligent agent is a system that perceives its environment and takes actions that simply maximizes its chance of success. So an AI machine works based on the programming we provide it with, such that it accomplishes its task in an intelligent manner. For your information, we already have a number of videos out there on the internet which show that artificial intelligence has already come into existence, which is not actually transforming into machine guns and everything and killing us off, but in fact they are helping us. A movie called Automation is Here would be a good start. An artificially intelligent machine does not have a brain like that of the human being, but has the capabilities to do things that we can't. You know, a machine is always much better off, is always much better in terms of efficiency than the creator. The creator cannot pick up big boulders, but the tractor can, but the bulldozer can. The machine can, but the creator cannot. So always the machine is much better in efficiency than the creator. But you know, movies like the Terminator series and the Matrix series show that AI machines will terminate the human race and rule over the planet. But there's a catch. Wanting to kill and wanting to take over are feelings. And feelings are caused by chemical reactions in the brain through a biological nervous system. And AI machines are not biological in nature. They simply fail to notice this fact because in the end, the people making these movies are not scientists who study AI, but are very good artists. They're not scientists. This is where their capabilities come to a halt. You know, these films only show the extraction of the current human value system into the future, whereas the future is going to be very different if we want it to be. It does not depend on what technology does to us, but rather on what use we put our technology to. We can either use nanotechnology to cure diseases and save millions of lives, or kill the same millions with an atom bomb. And more than technology ending the human civilization, it is going to be the current economic system. There are two things that show that all the economies are crashing and collapsing. First being technological unemployment, and the second being the hydrocarbon energy syndrome. Technological unemployment. Now, what is technological unemployment? As the name suggests, technology is coming into being and taking up jobs, and people are getting unemployed. As we had seen in monetary economics, automation is actually detrimental to the system since it creates unemployment. So, well, what has been happening is over the centuries, in fact, statistically, people have been moving from the primary sector, that is the agricultural sector, to the secondary sector, which is the manufacturing sector, to the tertiary sector, which is now the service sector. In the agricultural sector, what happened was the tractor came in, the bulldozer came in, the plow came in, and many other agricultural equipment came in, and hence people got unemployed since those equipment were very much cost effective. It is only cost effectiveness that drives people out of the system. It is the cost efficiency of machines, the cost efficiency of automation that drives people out of the system. So people had to move from the agricultural sector to the manufacturing sector. Now, since the manufacturing sector is all about manufacturing and producing goods, it has got a lot to do with automation. Because if a machine comes up that is much more efficient in producing goods than any human being, it will be implemented then and there itself, and that is what happened. All those machines which produced goods much more efficiently were implemented, and people got unemployed again, and hence they moved to the tertiary sector. Now in urban cities, statistically, around 80% of the people, around 80% of the working force works in the tertiary sector, which is the service sector. Now let me just explain to you. Even the service sector is being plagued by automation, and people are getting unemployed because of mechanization, because of machines coming into being and doing their jobs. For example, whenever you call a company, you don't get directly to the receptionist. You have to go through the whole IVR machine. You have to type in the options and blah blah blah. Whenever you are booking a ticket, you can easily book it over the internet. Let it be for the movie, let it be for travel, let it be for transportation, let it be for booking a hotel, from everything. The internet is working for booking tickets and for various kinds of bookings, and people are getting unemployed because of that. Another example, there used to be 4 people in a bank doing the job of the ATM. Now there is just one machine, the ATM, where you type in your PIN, you type in the amount, and within 2 minutes the cash is out and you're gone. Whereas this took around 15 to 20 minutes if there were tellers in the banks which used to count the notes, which used to make the entries and all those stuff, and now all those 4 people are unemployed in all those banks. Apart from that, there are again something known as automated kiosks, automated passbook entries in banks, which give you the entries in the passbook within a matter of 2 seconds. And again, people are getting unemployed because of that. There is a completely automated restaurant there in Germany which is working without any waiting staff. It is completely automated. It has maybe the highest level of cost efficiency till date in the restaurant business, because it does not have a waiting staff at all. It just has the chefs and the customers. That's all. You enter whatever you want on an automated menu, you pay for it then and there itself, and you get the food. Apart from that, there is also another machine that works as a chef. It hasn't been commercialized yet, but if you watch the movie Automation Is Here, you'll get to see what I'm talking about. So this is technological unemployment. People are getting unemployed every day, and this unemployment is only going to increase. This was realized by John Maynard Keynes, one of the biggest macroeconomists of all times. Even he admitted to the fact that something known as technological unemployment will plague the whole system later in the century. You can read his quote if you want to. Apart from that, the second thing is the hydrocarbon energy syndrome. Now, think of it. What does any economy need? What are the basic resources that any economy needs? Since economics is a study of production, distribution, and consumption, obviously you need energy to produce goods in order to produce goods. So one of the basic necessities of any economy is energy. And well, today, as we have seen in the movie Zeitgeist Addendum, there are a lot of sources of energy, clean, renewable energy, which can be implemented, and when implemented, we will have the next 6,000 years of free, clean, eco-friendly, renewable energy. But anyway, since we live in a scarce, resource-oriented economic system, we have the energy sector deals only in hydrocarbon energy, in the form of oil, petroleum, CNG, coal, and all those things. The larger term for this is hydrocarbon energy. Now, since this is scarce, it is a major part of the global economic system. It is a highly scarce resource. It wasn't that scarce in the earlier days, but with the increase in the rate of consumption of energy, it has become scarce, and it is becoming scarcer by the day. And by 2030, the world will be facing a major energy crisis. That this is actually a statistical study which is again out there on the internet. We can read about. You can read about. So the hydrocarbon energy syndrome. What is happening is energy is becoming scarcer by the day because we're relying completely on hydrocarbon energy, which is becoming scarcer by the day. Most of the production in the coming half century is going to stop. Most of it is going to stop. If production is going to stop, people are not going to be employed, and if people are not going to be employed, the unemployed workforce will not have the money to purchase the only goods that might be produced at that time. So what is going to happen is it is going to scratch off the wealth from the local people, the local citizens who used to be the employed citizens, into the hands of the people who are the major stakeholders of these energy companies, these so-called hydrocarbon energy companies. So these two aspects, the technological unemployment and the hydrocarbon energy syndrome, show that the current economic system is going to collapse within the next half century big time. Okay, so other than that, coming to the next question. This is a utopian vision. It is impossible to attain such a highly advanced social system. Now, to answer this, we'd just like to say, sit back and relax and listen to it with a cool head. People used to believe that Earth was flat. They denied to accept Da Vinci's working models. They even said that it would take us at least 1,000 years to reach outer space. They turned out to be wrong. Why? Mere assumptions based on opinions and notions are baseless and should not be put forth without approaching the problem scientifically. These assumptions, these notions, these opinions, and millions of other notions have been falsified using the scientific method. You know about them. You can again go to the internet and search about it. Since we live in today's value system, we have the tendency to bring the value system into our heads and produce the opinions we have. Since a citizen who is not well informed and doesn't have an opinion about everything is not a good citizen at all. Well, if a person sees a model of an airplane that doesn't have wings in today's date, if a person sees a model of an airplane that doesn't have wings, the person will say, "Oh, it doesn't have wings, the airplane will never fly." Well, ask this question: does that person have any knowledge of aerodynamics, physics, and engineering? If no, then that person is supposed to shut up. What the person is supposed to do is ask the person who knows. Ask them, well, I haven't seen any model like this before. I haven't seen an aircraft that doesn't have wings, so I'm having a big nagging doubt as to how it will fly. Can you please explain it to me? Ask the person who knows, rather than putting forth your opinion. That is what makes sense. You know, a species that is opinion driven is one of the most dangerous species ever, and you know why. So the system we offer, we don't even have the idea as to what technology has in store for us and what the future can be like. The system we offer as an alternative is not perfect. It is just a lot better than what we have. So this brings us to part 4, the transition. Okay, the realization. The basic realization is that a species' environment, that is, their social, economic, and technological structure, depends on their thought processes and the collective values they hold as a culture. If the thought processes of the species don't change, even the environment doesn't. Because you have to think first in order to do anything. And the thought processes are very much closely tied to the value system we uphold. These things might seem a little separate from each other at the moment. You might not be able to understand, you might not be able to combine these two concepts together, but when you sit back and think, you will get the result. So, the social, environment, and economic system, this is all that contains everything. So, if you put normal people, that is, people with the current distorted value system, into the resource-based economy, it will take them no longer than 5 days to make it a big pothole, pretty much as filthy as our current system is. Why? Because the values we uphold are socially self-defeating. And today's value system includes self-preservation, profits, benefits, and greed. So if you put people with this value system into the resource-based economy, they will say, oh, I need one house for vacation, I need one house for that, I need one house for this, and I need one house for that, I need another house on the island, I need a car which is much better than his, and the like, and it will be as filthy as the system is today. So what happens is that what we are currently dealing with is not a system disorder, but a value system disorder. The values inherited by us in our culture are by default aberrant and detrimental to our social well-being, plus have got nothing or very less to do with the whole causality of survival. Come to think of it, what should be the two goals of any species? The first purpose, of course, has to be survival. What is the second? Think of it. Once you have survival, once you have the resources, once you have all the necessities of life, everything you need, a house, food, clothing, everything, what happens? What happens then? Of course, you become happy. What then? What makes sense? Now that you're happy, now that you have all the resources, now that you have everything you need, what makes sense? To become competitive and kill each other? Pick up swords and fight? No. The second goal is to thrive. Thrive means to grow, to go towards progress. This is what will take us further from the resource-based economy. And this is when we will actually experience the real exponential growth of the human species, which has never been seen before. So we even have proofs in the form of videos which are out there on the internet again, that show us that all the physical structures and machines and everything required for the resource-based economy exists and can be put together to create a resource-based world. The only problem we face is the mental blockage. We are not ready to accept it yet. We are dealing with a value system disorder. So, the major motion picture. The Venus Project is actually developing a serious major motion picture depicting life in a resource-based economy. This film would be designed to reach the general public throughout the world to introduce a sustainable new social direction depicting a vision of what our future can be like. It would consist of an interesting storyline that engrosses the viewer to understand this new direction. The Venus Project has in fact completed and exceeded collecting the expected costs of producing the film through worldwide donations. Now this is something ironical, since the Venus Project propagates a system where there is no money, but to propagate that effectively in this monetary system, they need to have money. Now money in today's world is credit. The Latin root for credit is credere, and credere means to believe. People have this unquestioned faith and belief in this institution that actually has no value. These pieces of paper are in fact just pieces of paper. But just because it is accepted by everyone else, it is a common medium of exchange, people expect money in exchange for everything. Even economists themselves say that if people stopped believing in money, it would stop working as an institution then and there itself. Now, since money is required in this system to do everything, Obviously, the Venus Project needs money to create the major motion picture. Now, since this major motion picture is going to be as major as maybe Independence Day, or maybe Prometheus, or maybe Transformers and the like, it is going to cost them a hell lot of money. And hence, last year they put it on their website, maybe in, I don't remember the exact time, but around July 2011, that they would be needing funding for the major motion picture. They had set a goal of around $100,000, but they had also said that if we reach the goal well enough, it would only show that you've been benevolent enough to work towards a much better world. If we do not reach the goal, no problems, all those funds will be kept aside for something much better than that. So what happened was, very small donations, maybe $5, $10, $20, shot the whole donation up to $100,000 and even more than that. Once it got up to around $130,000, the Venus Project stopped collecting the donations, and they updated on the website that they're in talks with people who would be producing the film, hopefully people like Spielberg and the like. And again, fingers crossed, within the next 2 years we will see the major motion picture out there. Now the movie will ironically again have to be commercial in nature, because the non-commercial works by the Venus Project have been successful only for the internet community and not everyone. So there are tons of thousands of interviews of this man George Fresco out there on their official channel on YouTube, the Venus Project Media. But since not everybody has access to the internet, it has not been very successful in spreading the knowledge. So the profits from this film will be reaped, and those profits will be kept aside for building the first city, because again, the technology for building the first city is with all the construction companies, which they will obviously not give away for free. This is what I meant by saying that technology for the extraction and utilization of certain abundant resources is also scarce, which is much more scarce than the actual scarce resources, when I said this in the first slide. So now the major motion picture is supposed to start the chain reaction of developing resource-based cities all over the world. People in the first city will research upon how to improve the current one, plus how to build the next one, and the next one, and the next, and hence the whole chain reaction happens. So this is what the major motion picture is supposed to do. Well, now this was to show you what the Venus Project there in Venus, Florida is doing. Now what can we do? We need to reach the audiences and educate them about this new direction, that is, the shortcomings of the present system and the attributes of the proposed alternative solution through any possible mediums, which could be music, presentations, talks, movies, activism, street activism, anything. Remember, we are dealing with a value system disorder, and in order to change the environment for a better tomorrow, we need to change the way we think of the environment. The real revolution is the revolution of consciousness. When you come to think of how to change other people, sit back and think again. The real question is not how do I change other people, but the real question is how do I change myself? For if you don't change yourself, you won't be able to change, or at least even attempting to try to change other people. Until and unless you change yourself, you won't be able to answer their questions, since you would not have answered those questions yourself. What you need to do is simply accept things that make sense, even though they might attack and falsify your current value system, your social system, your faiths, and your beliefs. As simple as that. That is the key to changing yourself. For in fact, change is the only thing that has ever helped humanity if you look throughout history. So, if you would like to become a part of the organization's activism team here in Delhi, you could obviously contact us at india.delhi@tvpactivism.com. There is of course no compulsion, it's all voluntary. Other than that, If you want to become a part of the Venus Project directly, log on to www.thevenusproject.com and click on the tab Get Involved, and you'll get to know everything you want to ever know. There's a core team, there's a linguistic team, there's a research team, there's a scientific team, everything. Certain teams that might interest you. So you can log on and try to become a part of the Venus Project directly, rather than through an activism team if you want to. So click on the tab Get Involved and you'll get to know everything. So well, now this brings us to the end of today's video, and hence an end to the whole introduction to the Venus Project. So well, it's been nice to make these videos and share this knowledge with you, and I would like to thank you to bear with us to having had the confidence in us and having the urge to know more about the Venus Project and to understand what the Venus Project is all about. So I'd like to thank you again, and well, that's all. We'll be making more videos as well, but they won't be a part of this series since the introduction to the Venus Project is over. So thanks a lot, and ciao.